This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. I am so glad you're joining us in this new year. Oh my God, 2024. So wherever you're watching from, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tick, whether it's on Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify. Make sure you hit subscribe, or YouTube, wherever you are getting your Mile High tick. And of course, make sure you're coming to Mile High Altitude in September. RiseUpToMileHigh.com. I hear they have really great t-shirts, so you want to make sure you're there, if not for the speakers and the fun, at least for the t-shirts. And
the best thing out there.
And speaking of t-shirts, I do not usually wear this t-shirt when doing a podcast. Usually wear a specifically Mile High one, but I feel like we're gonna make it this one particular episode even louder, and I just felt like this was the vibe. 11 exactly one louder was going to be the vibe for this particular podcast. There you go. Because
one louder.
We have the phenomenal and good friend of mine, Dan Lyons, on this particular episode. We're glad to have him here. He's a lifelong Wisconsin native. I don't quite know why that is, but he is a lifelong Wisconsin native. He went to Palmer College and graduated in 96, and we have that in common because I graduated in 96 as well. He relocated to Green Bay, and so is probably cheering for the Packers. I'm thinking maybe, okay, just a little bit. And he served as president of many chiropractic organizations, including the Wisconsin chapter of Palmer alumni, and helps tremendously with Gonstead training, and we'll talk about that, and also philosophy training, and we'll also talk about that. And I am so grateful to have Dr. Dan Lyons on our Mile High podcast. Welcome to this particular episode, Dan.
Thank you, Danny. It's good to be back here. It's good to see your smiling face.
Well, I said, like, all day when I was seeing patients today, I was in the office, and when I saw that when I got home, I was going to have a podcast interview with Dr. Dan, my energy I got even more excited about the end of the day. So
I went to 11.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So, grateful to have you here. And by the way, do you have a favorite Mile High t-shirt? We'll talk about t-shirts and tick. Well, maybe have tacos too, but let's start with t-shirts.
All right. My favorite Mile High t-shirt is one I don't have.
Oh, which one?
It's the Led Zeppelin throwback one.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Yes. That's interesting. I got to tell you, there's something that disturbed me about that particular one.
What was that?
Yeah, I was so excited to, when I think what's pop culture, movies, music, what's for? The first thing is, of course, was Zeppelin 4. It's iconic. It's the only thing I could think of. I said, we'll have a Zeppelin themed event and it'll be fun, and make the t-shirts like that. And I got really depressed because at the event, people thought it was a cool t-shirt. They didn't get that they didn't know what Led Zeppelin was.
Oh man, we're dating ourselves.
Yes, exactly. I felt outdated, old, the students in the first year were like, well, I don't get what it is. And I was like, oh wow. It was kind of saddening. But if we ever bring that one out, we'll have to get you one.
Oh, please do. I know I had to. I've had to pull a lot of the jokes that I would use from the stage. Like, you can't crack a joke using a Caddyshack line these days. No,
I noticed that. Yeah.
Like, oh man, I got to rewrite all my material, all my best stuff.
The jokes weren't that good in the first place.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So
I'm not Brian Dooley.
yeah, well, yeah, and Sarah would have a difference of opinion in that. Sarah Dooley would have a difference of opinion in that. So now, moving to chiropractic, at least for a little bit, we get with t-shirts. Moving to chiropractic for a little bit. Philosophy, like, what do you mean? Like, why is philosophy important? Is philosophy important?
It's the most important of the three things.
Okay, and
philosophy,
why
science,
is
and art.
that? Why is that?
Because it gives you the framework and everything that is chiropractic. And if all you have is the philosophy and you really study it, not, oh, I read a green book here and I know a couple above, down, inside out. I can say that whenever I know when I should say that and not say that. And, chiropractic always works. If you really are a student of philosophy, eventually you'll figure out the science and the art. But if you just have the science and no philosophy, you're going to miss the bus. You're going to get a bunch of cases better. You're going to get some results. And, I think it was Jim Parker that said you hit everybody in the ass with a snow shovel, 70% get better, 20% get worse, 10% stay the same. And the reason a big portion of that 70% happens is because of innate intelligence. I mean, we don't know exactly where that bone needs to be. We just use all our experience and everything we learned, all the science and the art to nudge it in the right direction. BJ would say we just, put it in motion and let innate do the rest. That's what we do. Without innate intelligence, there'd be like 7 chiropractors on the planet, because we would not get the results we do because we're wrong probably more than we're right. Don't, well, I shouldn't say that. We don't hit the bullseye every time, we just have to be on the dartboard and innate gets it to the bullseye. But if we didn't have innate, we're all over the dartboard and we're never hitting the bullseye. And that's really all that matters. And if you just have art, then you're going to hurt people because you're going to be great at moving stuff and you're not going to know when, where, and how, or when not to. You just can move things from right to left or left to right.
Right. When I was at Sherman, I had the honor to have for philosophy, David Koch and
he's a philosophy diplomate.
Yeah, Bill Deckin.
He and I graduated from the program together.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, we were all first timers.
David Koch, Bill Deckin, and Val Panaccio were my philosophy instructors through school. And David Koch had, I may paraphrase, but he had something he asked us, and when you were talking, this reminded me exactly of that. And he said, we had to do an essay or something about like what would chiropractic be, or it was a conversation, what would chiropractic be without innate intelligence? It would be glorified physical therapy. Like if you are not considering innate intelligence in the picture of what you're doing, you're not practicing chiropractic.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
You're doing some kind of musculoskeletal therapy of some kind.
Yes.
And there may be some place for that in the healing arts world, but it's not chiropractic.
No, they do. It's called a physical therapy shop. There's one down the road. I like to say, our philosophy makes a promise to humanity of, what life should be like without any impediment to the mental impulse. And science, it verifies and validates that philosophy, and it does every day. I can pull up in 15 minutes. I can pull up more studies that support what we do than I can read in a month. It's ridiculous, and it's everywhere. And then the art is what really delivers that promise, and you have to have all three, otherwise you have nothing. And one of my favorite classes to teach in the diplomate is mentality, chiropractic mentality. And once the simple way to say this is that when you start school, almost no one that starts chiropractic college of the, what do we have, 18 colleges in the country now?
Right.
Most of the students are not from a chiropractic family. They may have seen a chiropractor, but they weren't like you who had a parent who was a chiropractor. I didn't have any. I saw a chiropractor as a child, when I was in high school, but I don't have any chiropractors in the family. And so we have a certain way of thinking, and it's always pretty much a medical way. And then about the end of your third semester or your first year, you start, if you're really studying, now you start to think this way. And I remember, we used to go to the mall or wherever, and, you're watching the girls walk. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, that's a bad right SI joint. That's a ASIN ilium on the right side. And then, so I had a Gonstead mentality there. So I was looking for those problems to fix.
Right.
Everything, you can see chiropractic everywhere if you study the philosophy enough.
Right. Vital. And now I got to ask you something, which is that I noticed a coffee mug right there. You did that on cue. I don't know how you did that. I noticed a coffee mug there. Where do you get a cool coffee mug like that?
Well, you have to know this guy named Danny Knowles, and he's a pretty cool guy. Then you got to get invited to speak out there. And the funniest thing, I should do this. But the funniest thing is that, then if you get there enough, you get to have other mugs. You get a little collection.
Get a little, and those are one of a kind. Those are one of a kind.
Yes. And the funny thing is, you haven't always done this though.
No. And that's actually something, we started that somewhere along the way because we want to appreciate the presenters, because the presenters at Mile High, and if you've not reserved your seat someplace, just go to riseuptomilehigh.com. You want to be on higher ground in September. So, but we want to appreciate it because the people that speak do such an incredible job. I mean, the presentations at Mile High, the quality of presentation, I'm blown away and impressed. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying just me, but I go to a lot of programs, have over a year, and I'm very careful about who speaks because I want them to have a certain message, right? Now, just like that coffee cup is a one-of-a-kind coffee mug, right? Is one of a kind. Like, in many ways, would you say an adjustment on any particular person is one of a kind?
Absolutely. The adjustment is only for that subluxation at that moment because it's changing. The body's always trying to adapt, and the subluxation hinders adaptation. It doesn't stop adaptation, it hinders it. And if it's like what's a Confucius saying, a man can never step in a river twice because the next time he comes back to the river, the water is different and he is different. It's the same thing. Your body's always adapting, and a lot of people that don't have philosophy and they don't have a good system of checking, because it should never be an assumption when someone comes in that they're getting adjusted. You have to have your system of checks. You have to find, is there interference to the mental impulse? And then you determine how to adjust. But if you don't have a system and you're always just thrusting PRS with the same amount of force, then you're doing a disservice. And the first 1, 2, 3 times, it may be okay because innate can cover that. But eventually, subluxations get caused because there's a force that innate can't adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of chiropractors out there that, totally discount this. And there's a lot of people that consider themselves philosophical chiropractors that don't ever consider this. But the force that we put into the body is a universal force, just the same as the fall on the slippery sidewalk in a winter that BJ wrote about in Small Things Are Large. Just like the fall off the ladder. Those things are small, but those are universal forces, same as any thrust we put in a patient. And if innate can't adapt it, then you're causing a subluxation.
Right.
Causing damage.
And you said something else that's super important that I think it's really important. We have students, we have doctors of chiropractic from all over the world that listen to these episodes, and I'm really honored by that being the case. Here's the thing. You said something super important. I know that's like a surprise, people are shocked that you're saying something important. I'm not.
I am.
You said, but this, which is that you said, we don't know where a vertebra is supposed to be. Innate, we don't know what the target is, and Nate's going to bring it to the target. And can you explain, because there are people that say, well, we have to put the bone here in this direction, this place, this is the ideal. Can you share anything about that?
Yeah, and it's somewhere in the middle. Like, CBP, they have their ideal curves on there. And there is a lot of validity to that, and Evan Katz just published that article where he's showing that when the curve got the curve back in a woman's neck, not only did her polynocturia go away and her pain, but her telomere length, the genetic caps on the end of the DNA actually increased. Hey, that's awesome.
Right.
But that ideal curve, that's a mathematical number that may not be what it should be on that for that individual. Only innate knows that. But when you look at someone whose neck looks like this, we know that's not good. That's not normal.
Right.
So where is it supposed to be 27 degrees? Maybe it should be, 25 and a half. When you're trying for those things, we like to think of being specific and precise, in Gonstead Methodology Institute, the saying we have up on the wall is where precision is paramount. My office name is, where's my mug? Here. I don't even drink coffee.
I love it.
I have mugs all over my desk here. So,
well, I do have no shortage.
Yes. So it's precision chiropractic, because precision is important, because you don't want anything to be random or just happenstance.
Right.
But there's no way you can look at an X-ray and know exactly where that bone should be. And it doesn't even show. An X-ray shows bones, but it doesn't show the disc, which in the Gonstead world, that's more important than the bone. And we know that the disc is now some authors are calling it its own organ system.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating when I saw that. It's classified as its own organ.
Yeah. So
which is fascinating.
Yeah. And we're not in charge of any of that. Innate is.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to get out of the way. We have to give it a little help, but it doesn't need that interference. It can't have that.
Right. Now here's the thing relative to this. Actually, Stevenson's has a quote. I'm going to paraphrase. I don't have Stevenson's memorized, but there's some line in it that says, no surgeon or this or that knows where a bone's supposed to be, not even a chiropractor in the right. So, and I agree, there's an ideal and we want to work towards that. And at the same time, innate knows where the vertebra needs to be in any moment in space. And we're doing our best to apply a force so that it can, so innate can assemble forces to utilize that use our universal force to make a change for the better, hopefully for the better. If it's not, it's not an adjustment.
And even if you knew exactly where, that curve should look exactly like this, but it's like this, at this moment in time where the neck has no curve, it might not be capable of achieving that curve at that moment in time. It might be over several weeks or a couple months, but at that moment in time when you thrust or do the traction, it's not capable of getting there. So everything is a process. Right. And some things happen real fast, like fall on the sidewalk or off the ladder, and some things take time. And destruction always is faster than construction.
Right, absolutely. I just got to share this because today my son has orientation.
I saw that
in college.
That's awesome.
Jack Borrell has sent me a picture, which is, he's going over above as president by doing that, taking it for, but he sent me a picture and it's just like, almost melted. I mean, not almost, I was like, couldn't hold back the tears, but even better, he sent me the schedule that they have, like his class schedule. Mm-hmm. And, or Danny sent me that. And in their first quarter at Sherman College, and I'm a Sherman College fan, and it's my alma mater. And in their first quarter, they have Bill Decken Brian Dooley, and Christopher Kent, all in the first as a first quarter student.
All heavy hitters.
That's pretty amazing.
The funny thing is that they don't know in first quarter anything. Well, Danny does, but your kid does. But no one else. You just show up there. Most people have no idea who those three people are. And
Right.
Christopher Kent's like another Wisconsin guy, by the way.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah, he's from Milwaukee.
Oh, I know he had a toughness practitioner when he was receiving care, but I didn't know. I guess I should have put together Wisconsin.
And toughness, also Wisconsin.
Right, exactly. That's why I should have put that together.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But he's like the smartest guy in the profession.
I know.
And one of the nicest.
And I kept telling Danny that when I realized, but like those three, I mean, you're going to get a very solid foundational philosophical base. I mean, to have a starting point of that.
Exactly.
Now, if people get a strong base of philosophy, well, I've read the green books, I picked up The Bigness of Fellow Within, so I've read the green books. So like, why would someone, I already know this, why do I need to do this ACP thing or a diplomat? Like, why are those things value? I already read a greener book or two. I read Stevenson's.
Because, reading Stevenson's, and I think I have 8 copies of Stevenson's, maybe more. And I've read all of them several times. You learn something every single time. If you're trying to pick up a new skill, like shooting a free throw, and you go out and you shoot a free throw, watch a video, read a book on shooting a free throw, and you shoot a free throw, one free throw, you are not an expert. You're not even good at it. It's repetition, time and time again. Right. The problem is that when we read things, we interpret them, and we are very capable of interpreting things wrong. Remember, the second chiropractic college,
we could interpret things wrong.
It might have happened. There was this year about 3 years ago where everything was interpreted wrong. Whether that was on purpose or on accident, we don't know. But it was a whole thing. I don't know. If
Imagine that.
Some people don't know what we're talking about. But the second chiropractic college that ever existed was just down the street from Palmer, and it was a horrible mixer school.
Down the street.
Every single chiropractic college exists because Palmer existed, because Dede adjusted Harvey, and so that every single person that deviated from chiropractic to incorporate something non-chiropractic into their school, that all comes back to some individual's misinterpretation or some other bias that led them to say this is a better way to go. And so if you don't do it over and over again, and the reason you want to do the LCP or the ACP and then continue to the diplomate class, which you can still enroll in, starts soon, but you lost a $500 discount. But if you do that, then you get the best instruction where you have that framework, those walls, and the sounding board to talk about and have these discussions and bounce it off. And even if you're and like the LCP and the DPHCS, we don't do that online. It is very important to be in the room, because those discussions that you have that you don't have during a Zoom class, because let's be honest, when you're in a room and someone says something, everybody's turning off and asking, does that make sense to you? And then a whole discussion occurs. And when we went through it, Dr. Rob Sinnott had digitized all the green books and had them on a CD-ROM, and everybody in the class had it. And so when someone would say something, all of a sudden you'd hear all those drives winding up, and everybody be fact-checking. And then as we finished the third year, Dr. Barge had passed away, so now we were teaching the class to ourselves. We had the syllabus, and so we were assigned topics. And so you did not, if you were speaking, you did not want to hear that little thing, DVDs spinning up. That was a little pucker factor right there, I'll tell you. But it's those discussions that you have before, not so much during and after the seminars at dinner, that really help you grow as a chiropractic philosopher with your philosophy and your understanding of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something about different methodologies, and I like to talk about that. And my son said something. We were talking about chiropractic a little bit before he went. I'm trying to let him get his own path, and not be the helicopter parent. And he said, I said to him, look, here's the thing you want to do. You want to learn it all. Like, you want to go and say, look, I want to learn, upper cervical and Gonstead and network and Logan. You want to learn everything that you can learn, because that person that's going to be on your table 4 years from now deserves your best. And you've got to take in, don't just learn upper cervical. Don't just learn Gonstead. Like, you're at this point where you have to just take it all in as much as you can of different points of view around the art, and that's what I told him was my advice on that, and you should definitely learn network because your grandfather, but you should learn it, and you should learn other things as well. You should learn as much as you can. And by the time, you start in first couple of years of practice, you'll have a sense of what resonates with you. We'll just say that. So
Yes.
Gonstead resonates with you. And it more than resonates, you're involved with teaching it, instructing it, the science, the research. Can you share a little bit about what's important about what Gonstead brought to chiropractic?
Oh man, that's a big. It's like we're writing. We're not. I don't want to say rewriting, but we're updating the Gonstead chapters.
Mhm.
And so I've written a philosophy chapter, and then parts of several other chapters, and that's a big thing. Gonstead, I call his philosophy working man's philosophy. It
Mhm.
wasn't full of flowery words, and he didn't say innate intelligence. But
Mhm.
he has a quote. The principles of the Gonstead system are the simple principles of chiropractic put to work.
Mhm.
And when you look at what I taught when I was out there last time, and I usually teach at Sherman. I usually call it Gonstead for the non-Gonstead chiropractor. And in the Gonstead system, we have several tools that we use to determine where, when, how, and when not to adjust. And they're, the physiology or symptomatology, what's going on with the patient, X-rays, instrumentation, motion palpation, static palpation, and visualization. And if all those things say that you should probably adjust T12, you got 6 things telling you should adjust T12. And if they all say a different segment, then you should probably go back and start over. And he's got a different quote where he says, do not be in a hurry. Spend all the time necessary to correct your patient's problem. Check and recheck your X-ray, palpation, instrumentation, blah, blah, blah. So he goes through all these things. But, every patient has symptoms and physiology. Symptoms, as much as we might not want to talk about the cessation of symptoms or that's what drives patients into the office. How many patients, other than ones that were sent to you by another principled chiropractor, how many patients have you come in and say, I would like to be checked for vertebral subluxation, please?
Right.
Have you ever had one?
Right. I've had, but not
Yeah,
too many.
but they knew that, so they had seen a principled chiropractor. Someone just off the street doesn't know
Use the word
what vertebral
subluxation.
subluxation is.
They've said things like, I like my spine to be healthier, my spine to be better,
Yeah.
and my health to be better, and I know somehow this will
Yeah.
contribute, but not usually use subluxation
Yeah.
in their intake form.
Yes. But
Right.
if they haven't said anything about other symptoms, then they got something else that's prompting them in. Like they know a little bit more than the average person, because most people come in
Right.
because they hurt and it's stopping them from doing something. So every chiropractor can use physiology and symptomatology. Every chiropractor can shoot an X-ray. Every chiropractor can grab I'll showcase the EDL,
Ah,
the new Pro X scope.
love it.
So every chiropractor can buy one of those, or an older nervous scope or a Delta T and use them. Every chiropractor can static palpate and motion palpate, and most chiropractors can see, so they can visualize the patient move and get feedback from them. So those are all, when he said, the principles of the Gonstead system are the simple principles of chiropractic put to work, that's what he meant. It's not cherry picking certain things, instrumentation. Typically, back then it was basically this. BJ was trying to work on the electroencephaloneural and tympograph, but he didn't have it perfected, and then he passed away. So we don't have that. But we use surface EMG, we use infrared thermography, we use HRV. I know some people that use EEG. All those are available tools. It's all instrumentation. X-ray is huge. I don't know why anybody would not want to have an X-ray, because it tells you things that your fingers and anything that comes out of the patient's mouth can't tell you. And if you don't use those things, you're depriving your practice, yourself and your patients, of a little piece of that puzzle that gets them a little bit better, a little bit faster.
Right. And I think that's all vital. And I always tell people that they should use as wide a range of objective indicators as they can, as wide a range as they feel they can do. Add more, because what will happen is these sensors will get better as you look at more objective indicators. Okay, because you'll start to learn things that you can't even explain why you feel them as you put them together with x-rays and instrumentation, and your skills will grow up, increase with that. Now with that, I mean, Gonstead's contributions were huge to chiropractic. I know you feel so, and you would agree.
Yes.
How I've never gotten to go to Mount Horeb. What is that experience like, and why should people do that?
Well, I think everybody should at least try, because it's part of the history. It's like when people show up at Palmer College and get to walk the halls, it's very different. You feel it in the halls, even though most of them have been remodeled and look very different than when they were there, when BJ was there. But then you go into BJ's mansion, and then you get the feels. I mean, there is nothing like that in chiropractic.
I've been there, and it's
it's just, I was going to go to National, because when I first decided to go to chiropractic college, because my two roommates from college were living in Chicagoland, and I had lived basically around the corner from there one summer when I was working, and I had a gym picked out and everything, and I went there. That was my one visit. And then I had a friend from high school that was at Palmer, and she heard that I was going to National, and she called me every day. And Karen, if you see this, thank you very much. And I just said, I'll come and visit if you just stop calling me. And so I went down there and I got on campus, and I was like, oh, this is why. And so, very glad I made that decision going there.
Excellent.
And Mount Horeb's kind of like that. I mean, it is the biggest space that chiropractic has for a clinic ever. I mean, it's enormous, and it's architecturally gorgeous. I mean, who else had to build a 167 room hotel to house their patients in the profession?
Right. Absolutely. It's amazing. And what about, can you share anything, because you're involved with, and maybe this might be winding down the things that I'll ask, but research, you're involved. Share people how you're involved with Gonstead research.
Mostly by just funding it. I have some side projects that I have going on here in the office, that when I get them sorted out, I think it'll be like the pilot study that will really move the needle for research. But with the Gonstead Clinical Studies Society, which I'm on the board of, that's who basically does all the research. And Joel Alcantara, who I just met at Lyceum last year. I've talked to him on the phone a couple times, but just met him. We happened to walk in a thing, and he was being honored at IRAPS. And then I walked up and I said, "Hey, Joel, it's good to meet you. I'm Dan Lyons." He's like, "Oh my gosh," because you never know what people look like until you meet them. So it's kind of funny. But he's done a lot of great research, and we're always working on raising money and doing more. We have a research project that's going on at Palmer College right now and should be wrapped up, talking about the importance of the analysis of the pelvis. And the SI joints, they don't move very much, and some people say, well, that's because they don't move very much, we shouldn't consider them at all. Where I would argue that if they're supposed to have that 3 to 5 millimeters and 3 to 5 degrees of rotation, losing a degree it's a 20% loss of function. You wouldn't accept that anywhere else. So there's so much more we don't know about the body than we do know. I'm looking for when the next time we're at Mount Horeb. It's so important that we don't write things off because we have our own bias. That's how chiropractic got in this mess in the first place, with having, some people learn from Didi himself and then walk down the hill and say, I know better than he, and I'm going to start my own school, and we're going to rub spoons on people.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And call it chiropractic. Well, I think it's important to emphasize that there is significant research relative to the outcomes with Gonstead procedures, and people need to be aware of that.
And we need more. We
need more. There's
nothing wrong with more research. And I know a lot of my Gonstead friends cringe when I say this, because I, as far as people doing, keeping their profession, their system relevant in everybody's mind's eye, no one does it better than CBP. I mean, they have so much research that shows pre, post, and improvement in all outcomes, not just symptomatic outcomes. The change in blood pressure, change in telomere length, all kinds of stuff. And the problem with most of our research is that we don't have a set form of analysis, and then we have an intervention.
Yep.
And the intervention is usually not just adjusting thrust. We did that, and we did some ultrasound and muscle stim and blah blah blah, and then we have a change, but we never go back and say, did the tools, the indicators of adjustment did improve? Because if someone their telomeres are short, and I just thrust on them, I don't know, 5 times, 500 times, and their telomeres are long, and their neck still is this straight, well, then it wasn't my adjustment, didn't have any part of that, or it's very less likely to have had a part of that. You got to have pre and post in everything. Right.
Well, and I think overall it's vital for people to know research just has to be ongoing. There's no like, oh, we have enough research. I've heard people say, well, we don't need any research. We know chiropractic works.
The science has never settled.
Yeah, it's a horrible statement. And I've heard people say it from stages, and it's just, that's sad. And we have to hold a standard that we can always have more research and learn more relative to outcomes and how to adjust people. And, even like what you said, we don't like to talk about symptoms. You know what? I think that's a problem. I think we need to be okay with talking about symptoms. It's, are we treating them? Are we having an objective to be therapeutic in what we're doing, or is it taking in as part of the information for the practice member's clinical picture?
Absolutely. It's a part of the human experience. You can't ignore the symptoms. And I did for years. I remember first time I read a Strauss book, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot. And I felt like I was dishonoring my patients, because they're coming there, they're pouring out their souls, and then you just ignore it.
Right. Right. And that's not the point. Right.
And there are some there's some pearls of wisdom in there. Sometimes some of that symptomatology they're expressing is telling you, don't do that again.
Right, right, exactly. And it's, again, it can also tell you more about their who they are and how they're living their life and how they're experiencing their world. It doesn't mean that you're treating it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a difference between being therapeutic versus having a picture of the whole person and their life experience.
If your conversation is all, how is your flatulence? That's their symptom they're coming in with, and that's all you ask. Is it, more? Is it less? Is it smellier? Is it less smellier? Then you are just treating flatulence.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hope that as the patient is under your care, they are expressing less and less abnormal physiology because the care is effective.
Right, exactly. So, Dan, I'm super grateful for your contributions to chiropractic. I'm super grateful you have be a 2 times speaker at Mile High. Is it 2 or more than 2?
3.
Yeah,
And I moderated a science panel.
Yes. Here's an interesting thing. There was SNL skits. You may remember these. If not, you have to go to YouTube of like the 5 Timers Club. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. They did a skit of like, well, I got to be a host 5 times.
Yes. My favorite one is when Justin Timberlake got his jacket.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, exactly.
And he goes up to talk to I forget.
Steve Martin.
No, it's because Steve Martin was never a cast member.
Right.
He was just always a host. He was on so many
times. Right.
But I think he went up to Dan Aykroyd, who was a bartender, because Aykroyd's only hosted twice.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been back a lot. And Steve Martin was like, no, we don't talk to them.
Yeah, that's what it was. So I'll have to come up with an award when somebody did the 5 Timers Club for speaking at Mile High. I don't know if anybody's been that. Well, maybe a jacket or something.
You might be.
Yeah, myself, 5. Joel Kinch. I don't know if we count.
Joel, Danny, who else? Rochelle, I'm sure has.
Yes, Elise Rigney has. So there you go. But we'll have to have something like that. Well, again, Dan, grateful for your contributions to chiropractic. Thank you for being in the 3 Timers Club. We'll see what you do to bring that higher. Okay.
I like it.
And you have a whole collection of mugs. Okay.
There we go. I'm gonna have to have a whole shelf in the office.
And I'm grateful for your contributions to changing spines, minds, and lives with chiropractic.
Thank you, Danny. And you. I mean, the being on this podcast is great. Coming out to Mile High and getting to experience that, and my wife, the first time we were out there was actually because you had my wife come out and speak.
Right.
And she saw my mugs, and she's like, "I never got one of those." And I'm like, I think they started doing it after that.
They did it. We'll have to see what you do to hook her up with a mug.
I'm gonna have a Mile High mug made for her like you did, and then give it to her for her birthday.
There we go. That's what you got to do. So excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for your contributions to chiropractic. Thank you for being a 3-Timer Club member of Mile High, and thank you for being on the podcast. Everyone who's watching, again, dial in the date. Be on higher ground in September 26th weekend 2024, and riseuptomileHigh.com is where you can get all the details. And please hit subscribe so you can always be never miss any Mile High tech. And we're grateful to help you dial in your chiropractic message in your office. Keep changing your spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.